Welcome to the channel. Happy Easter for those of you who are celebrating that holiday. I celebrate it every year by going to my favorite Spanish restaurant and having a very big, giant, wonderfully steaming hot, expertly prepared dish of rabbit stew. So I align myself with the idea of the Easter bunny, I guess, as a entree. Anyway, as we are beginning today, we're going to talk about storage. And this was motivated more as a public service announcement to. So let me give you a little backstory on this. So I am teaching an online course, and I teach a lot of online courses in music production. And one of the issues I'm having, that students are having, is media management. People just simply haven't really had to address this topic of media management. And before we get into it any further, I'm going to grab something over here. So just hang on, everybody. Hang tight. I got to find it. Oh, here it is. This laptop. And then there's this under here. This is a SATA hard drive. And I'm sure if you're under the age of 30 and you're watching this video, you may have never even seen one of these. So this is the older style of hard drive. We now have SSD drives. So SSD drives have no moving parts, and they read and write a lot faster. And they're found in every device that we own, our phones, our MacBooks, tablets, etc. So gone are the days of the old mechanical SATA drives, and in are the new non-moving part solid-state hard drives. And this sort of is going to open up to what this video is going to be truly about in a second. But I wanted to just give all of you a heads up as to where we're going with this, as you will see in a minute. So a lot of folks who are new to music production, believe it or not, may have never even produced music on a computer. They may have produced it on their phones or their tablets, but they haven't used one of these. And I hate to say it, this is here for a while longer. You have to learn how to use software, and you have to learn file management. Super, super important. And everything that you're using has some sort of hard drive associated with it. And in this case, we're going to take a closer look at the Macintosh, particularly Logic, and how we save projects in Logic and what we have to think about. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up a Logic project that's empty. And I'm going to explain a little bit about storage at the very sort of basic level of Logic. So most people who are using music production software, believe it or not, aren't really creating much in terms of content. They're using MIDI data, and they're using data to trigger internal sample libraries that they've already installed. And the audio file that's actually produced is very small, and it often ends up on DistroKid or CD Baby or something, and there's not much thought beyond that. And that's because a lot of people who are producing music these days aren't recording live instruments. So they're not necessarily in tune with storage needs, since they're not using one of these, a microphone, to record content, as I'm recording right now, into a hard drive, my computer, my Mac Studio. So more on that later. But I'm going to open up a Logic project, a new Logic project, a brand new one. And I'm going to use a MIDI file. And I'm actually going to import, open up a sample library. And we're not going to, let's just use a synth. We'll use a soft synth. One of these Arturia synths. And let's get this show on the road here. So let's go into settings and let's change this to audio. No, we already have that. I think the speakers are off. That's why. So I'm not hearing anything because the speakers are off. That's fine. And because we're not going to be working with speakers today, or maybe we will. In fact, let me get my trusty headphones out, and we'll just do it this way. So please stand by. All right, here we go. So I'm going to plug this in, and hopefully I'll hear what you're hearing. Okay. So audio, right? But are we making a big data file, especially if we were to say just record something simple? So I'm going to record something simple here. I'm going to hit record, and I'm just going to hold the sustain. Now, what we've just produced is not audio data. We've actually produced MIDI data that is triggering audio data that is being triggered by the software that lives within the virtual framework of the hard drive of the computer. And so if I was to save this logic project, I'm not actually saving any audio file data with it. I'm simply saving a MIDI file. And if we call this file, for example, save as storage, I'm going to store it. But it's really interesting. Where am I storing it? Well, it's being saved to what hard drive? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different hard drives hooked up to this computer. Well, the default save in this particular instance is going to be saving it to the logic file within the user section of the computer's main hard drive. And that's not actually where I want to save it. I want to save it externally. Not that it's taking up much space because it's only a data file since there is no audio data associated with this. I want to save this in a space where there's more room, and that's specifically reserved for working in project mode where I'm saving things. So I'm going to save this as a new folder. I'm going to call this new folder storage, just since that's the topic of what we're doing. Now, I'm going to save this file as storage, and it's going to ask me a few things if I want to save it as a package or I want to save it as a folder. So if I save it as a folder, it's going to give me a breakdown of what's called a session file. It's also going to give me an audio file folder and maybe a sample folder. And copy the following files into your project: audio files. Now, as you can see, there is no audio file associated with this particular project. So if I save this project and I then close it down, close project, and I go back into my terabyte, and where it says today's storage, we can see storage. Is there going to be anything in the audio file folder? No, because we did not record any WAV or AIFF data. So let's talk about file size. Based on all of that, is this going to be a big or a small file? It's going to be a small one, I think, because there's no real audio data associated with it. So if I Control I, 389 kilobytes. There's no data stored at all in here. There's data, but there's no audio file data because I haven't recorded anything and I haven't created anything. Now, let's reopen that project again. And I'll use this project as sort of a jumping off point for other things. If I were to reopen storage and I was to bounce this file in place, I would actually be creating an audio file. So I'm going to go click. Oops, how are we going to do this? Control click, and then I'm going to bounce in place. And it's going to ask if I want to include the audio file tail, because if there's some reverberance, it's going to keep going until it doesn't detect any more amplitude of audio signal in the file. I'm going to choose normalization off. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to call this bounced synth track. And there we have it. So now we have an audio file. We also have the original MIDI file. So we have this, which is the same as this muted region. But they're not the same. One's an actual rendered, recorded version of the above track, and the other one is simply just a data file. So now we've actually started to create content. And if I go into the Media tab over here, you will see that it tells us exactly what type of file this is. So this is a 24-bit file. That's 44.1. And look at this. This is important. It's 2.2 megabytes. So this is how many seconds of audio? Let's take a look. Let's open up Giant Time Display. This is roughly 7 seconds of audio data and 24-bit, 44.1 sample rate. It's now 2.2 megabytes worth of space. That's in addition to what the original file size was. So if I close this, close project, it's going to actually ask me to save that. And if I open up my hard drive over here, we're now going to see storage. And look at that. There's an audio file that lives in there. And it'll tell us based on the file extension what kind of file it is. So in this case, it's a WAV format. And believe it or not, AIFF and WAV are different in terms of absolute file length, in terms of how long you can record one WAV and one AIF file for. I forget what it is, but I think it's an hour for one and 2 hours for the other one. I'd have to look that up. But it's kind of rare unless you're recording a speaker that or some kind of concert that it is longer than that, which is why you should be mindful of it. So the bounced audio file is 2.2 megabytes. And this actually creates a situation where we have a much larger session. So the session, as it was before, was, I think, in the kilobyte range, and now the session will be in the megabyte range because we've created a new audio file. So hopefully this makes this a little bit more specific into how this works. Now we're going to get a little bit more complicated. So we're going to open up a brand new Logic project now. We're going to start over again. And remember, we have to point our Logic project to some place we want to have it stored, preferably not on the computer we're using, but on some kind of external storage that's local, not cloud-based storage. We'll talk about cloud-based storage in a minute. But for now, we're going to open up Logic Pro again. And this time, media management's going to get a little bit trickier. So we're going to select audio file, create, and we're going to do file, save as, again, to our terabyte drive. And we're going to save it in the storage file. And we're going to create a new folder called Project 2. And we're going to go create. Now, in this instance, we're going to copy the movie file that we're going to use into the project folder. And we're doing this to save all of the assets within one project. And this is important if you're working in film post or you're a film composer and you want to stay organized. So we're going to open up a movie that I just made earlier this week for the channel. Oops, we're going to save our project first. We'll save it as project 2. That's fine. And then we're going to go File, Open, and let's find a movie. Gosh, I am not with it today. Sorry, folks. Import. Movie. Open movie. There we go. So we're going to open movie. And we're going to open up a movie that we already created that should be in the terabyte drive. And we'll call it Rush Fixed Audio. That's pretty long. Now, this is important. The first thing you should notice is movie file size. It's 8.98 gigabytes, which means that that's a really big file. And if we open that file up, Logic's going to ask us if we want to extract the audio data from the actual film itself. And we're going to select yes in this case. And we're going to change this. Logic's going to open up the movie. There it goes. And it's going to bring in the audio file. So now we have the movie file and we have the audio file. But as you could probably surmise, this audio file, because this is a really long movie, relatively speaking to what we were last working on, this audio file is going to be quite large. So if we go in here, we can see that the audio file is there, and we can see that it's 331 megabytes. So what impacts the size of an audio file? Sample rate, bit rate, and length. And you can guess that the the more the sample rate is, the more the bit depth is, and the longer the file is, the longer the file is going to be, the bigger it's going to be. So when we close this project, file close project, save, give it a moment to save. Saving. So as it's saving, you can already see what the implications are of this. And I think what it's doing right now is it's copying that movie file into the folder that that's been created for the project. And I can kind of see the lights are blinking on the hard drives, which means it's doing its thing. And it should be done momentarily. But that couldn't take time depending on the size of the file. So we're doing this in real time just so you guys can have a very realistic sense of what working in this is like and understanding storage and why it's really, really important. So it's still going. It's still doing its thing. So while it's doing its thing, let's go into the Finder and let's see what's going on. So if we go into the Finder, for example, and we go to Storage, we can see that it's still working on creating a movie folder, or sorry about that. It's going to be creating a movie folder. Oh, there it is. The audio file's right here. So we have the audio file here. It's done. And we have the movie file here. Now, if our movie file is 9 gigs and our audio file is 331 gigs, 331 megabytes, what's 9 gigs plus 331 megabytes? Well, it's almost 9 and 9.4 gigabytes. Yes, you do need to know how to add. It's important. So understanding this kind of workflow is just absolutely essential to how you are working. So that's part 1 of the video. So we have these 2 projects in this folder. And if we take a look at the aggregate level of file size we're dealing with a lot of work. We're dealing with 9.3 gigabytes of actual data, which is a lot. So this begs the question for my classes or any other class, storage, and why you should think about storage. So you can see there's the Macintosh hard drive. There's the sample drive 1, sample drive 2, and you can guess that my sample libraries, the libraries I use, strings, winds, brass, etc., omnispheres, all that stuff, contact player, these are on these 2 sample libraries. On OWC, now OWC is actually an old school SATA drive, and I'll talk about that, why I'm using it for that particular world in a minute. And then we have a work drive that I write everything to. And if you Command I, it'll tell you how big the drive is, but it'll also tell you how much storage you have left. So I have 1.29 terabytes of capacity, but I've used most of it. I only have 7.24 gigabytes left, which is going to cause me problems unless I start managing media and moving stuff around. So in this class, we're using, or in some of my classes, and I'm making this very sort of pertaining to a particular online class I'm working on right now, which is an online class where people are having storage issues. We have to think about like how we're storing our stuff and where we're storing our stuff. And as I'm recording this video, I'm actually mindful that it's taking up space on the hard drive that I'm recording it to. So I'm recording this video to one of my sample drives, which I said I would never do, but I'm doing this because this is the drive that happens to have the most space on it. So if I look at it right now, it's got 231.95 gigabytes, which is a fine amount of storage space. So I'm sort of storing to there. And let me make sure it's still recording, which in fact it is. All right. So let's go into our Macintosh ecosystem where we go about this Mac. So in About This Mac, under More Info, we see storage. And on the main Macintosh hard drive, which has a total capacity of about 1 terabyte, we're using most of it, 994 gigs, and we have 83.67 gigs left. So if I go to Storage Settings here, it's going to tell me what's taking up the most space on this particular drive. And on this drive, we have 108 gigs of documents, so I should go through those. And we also have some other subsample libraries and software that's being used on this as well. The applications are taking up an incredible amount of space, and it's still calculating the overall size of those. So if I check all volumes here, it's going to give me a breakdown of all the storage that I have, and it's going to calculate what's being used where. But as you can see, in the work drive, there's only 1.91. Oh my goodness, there's not much left here. I still have 671 gigs of 1 terabyte I have 328 gigs of gigabytes left. God, I'm getting confused. But this gives me a sort of a big picture view of what's used in my storage situation. So this is storage part 1. And I'll talk more about specific storage mediums in the next part of this video. But if you are having trouble with storage, it's because you're not understanding how Logic actually stores and figures out how projects work. So back to Logic. So if you're in Logic, incidentally, every DAW is like this, every single DAW that you use. And you look at audio data, for example. So let's just find a cue that I'm working on here. Oh, this is a good one. So a little pop quiz would be, is this going to take up a lot of space? We'll find out in a second. So I'm loading up the project, and the reason it's taking so long to load is it's putting virtual instruments into the RAM of the computer, and it's also loading up some other pretty intensive software that I use when I'm working. So if we take a look at our, there we go, and there we have it. If we take a look at our session, in this particular session here, are there any audio files that have been rendered? And the answer is no. So the actual file size of this, even though it sounds like this, and we'll start from the beginning. So even in this small project that only has 6 tracks, it's not really taking up much space because none of these tracks are audio tracks. These are all MIDI-based tracks triggering sample libraries. So that's one. Now, I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to find a multi-track and show you the difference where this really starts to make sort of issues for folks. So hang on, stand by. Okay, we're back. Now, this is a different project. This has audio data in it. I'm just playing around, improvising. There's not much to see here. But importantly enough, if we unpack this to new tracks and we go into our media folder, I've already done some recording, and it'll tell me how many WAV files I have, and it'll also tell me what kinds of regions I'm using in those WAV files. But overall, this project itself, if we were to save as, and I'll just sort of copy it over so you can see, since I've done some live recording. So if we save as this project date, I'm going to actually save a copy of it in storage right now. And I'm going to have it copy over the audio files, and we'll call it new project. And I'm sorry about my naming conventions. They aren't great. And we close this down. And we open up, for example, the terabyte drive here. And we take a look back in storage. We can see that there's audio files. Now, if we select all of these audio files, the total amount of data that those audio files are taking up are 84.4 megabytes of data. And again, in order for us to send any of these files to anybody. If we're collaborating with other artists and they're sending us vocal tracks, or we're sending them vocal tracks, or any other tracks for that matter, we need to know how to sort of do this. So we're going to go into the new project and we're going to zip the project. Okay, we're going to compress it here. Now we have the compressed file, and we can send this file to anybody via some kind of sending service, Dropbox, OneDrive, or whatever. But we're not writing our files to any cloud-based system. We're writing them all locally. So all of the storage I'm using is configured and hooked up to this computer. And I could turn around the camera, which I think I'll do now. So I'll turn the camera around a little bit and show you guys what I'm talking about. I have a storage array here, and it's called an OWC. So we're going to go on a little field trip. Here we go, field trip. Ready? So here we have the storage array, and the storage array is where all of the drives are located. And that's basically my workflow for this particular room. It's different because I have 2 different rooms in this studio space, but that's basically how it's configured for all of this. And this is something you just need to know how to do. And hopefully this clears up storage issues. Now, this is part 1 of this video. We're not even to where do we download sample libraries to. That's a different video. But for the sending and receiving of projects, you really need to know how this works. And if you have any questions or you would like me to explain further how this works, please let me know.